Welcome to another perlani video. So today I would like to address a bit of my grievance regarding the fact that there are no good, in my opinion, claw grip mice on the market, specifically for that grip type. So if you thought that mice which are a bit smaller, let's say medium sized, that they are, specifically catered for claw grip, you would be wrong. So this one, for example, which I have, which is the Logitech G203 or G102, I believe in the States. So this is advertised, or at least it's, considered a claw grip mouse because it is a bit smaller. So usually people associate that with claw grip, right? So something like this one, which is the Zowie FK1, which is a bit bigger in size, right? It's usually considered palm grip. So the FK2 is considered claw grip. Same thing with the G203. Now, the problem with that is that I have tried claw grip mice which are radically different from this, right? So even though there are almost no more mouses on the market today which sport that design, in the past they were, so something along the lines of the G9 and the G9X from the same brand, Logitech, right? So they were, if you haven't seen them or used them and you're using a claw grip, you don't know what you're missing on. They were much shorter, right, and wider. So when I claw grip this mouse, for example, as you can see, I use a pretty heavy claw grip, and the problem that I have is, first of all, these main buttons are too, if you could say that, they're a bit too long, right? So the G9 and G9X, for example, there were others as well, they had much shorter main buttons. They were pretty short, actually, compared with the entire body. And they were a lot wider, right? So they were like this, okay, which is much better than the fact that I have to, like cramp my finger like this in order to get a good solid grip on the mouse. So some other ones which were like that, Mad Cats had a whole bunch, I believe. And today, I don't know if you can even get a design like that on a mouse. I believe Cooler Master has the Cooler Master Storm Spawn, I believe, has a design like that. So again, it's much bulkier. Usually the backside is a bit protruding out. It's a very wide, a very wide shape, and it is pretty, it's not as long. So this is why I titled this video "Bring Back the G9X," since it was pretty much almost a perfect claw grip mouse. Like I said, I've been using this one, which is the G203, which is a bit, like I said, it's a bit too, it's just not an ideal shape for a pure claw grip, which I use, unfortunately. So yeah, now I'm gonna go over the features that the G9X had, okay, and I'm gonna tell you what I would prefer if they did a new revision of the G9 and G9X, of course, which was pretty much the same mouse. The G9X just had a higher DPI. So the one thing that the G9 and the G9X had was interchangeable grips, right? So basically what that means is there were two grip types on it. You had the much wider sapphire finish, it was the silver finish, and you had the grippy version, which was against sweating, I guess, which had a much rougher texture on it. It's kind of hard for me to visualize this for you, since I don't have the G9X anymore. It broke down years ago, but yeah, it was a grip which you just attached onto the mouse, right? And interestingly enough, you could use the mouse without any grip attached to it, right? A lot of StarCraft 2 pros used to use that. They really prefer the G9 and G9X. I know they used it a lot in the StarCraft tournaments. So yeah, but I used the sapphire silver finish on it, and it was amazing. I loved it. So yeah, interchangeable grips. Now the one problem that I had with interchangeable grips was the fact that since it wasn't like, you know, it just snapped on, kind of, but the problem was that it used to hear some cracks here and there, because it just, you know, it just wouldn't fit perfectly on there, just like 100%, right? Because there was like a clamping mechanism, and obviously that you know, that isn't 100% always, as it is plastic, you know, moving into each other. So I would prefer a exact same shape like that, just not that it's, you know, that you can remove the grip and put another one on. I would prefer one which is like, you know, a standard one. Then of course onboard memory, which this mouse has as well. Usually most gaming branded mice, which the G9 G9X were, have onboard memory. That way I don't have to mess with the software. I can just, if the mouse does come with software, which I don't mind, as long as it has onboard memory, I can change the settings, tune them the way I want, save them onto the mouse, and that way, you know, I can uninstall the software. I don't have to worry about it ever again. Also, the G9 and G9X supported weight tuning, so you could actually put weights into the mouse. Now this is pretty, for some people, pretty gimmicky. I used, did I use weight tuning? I think I did. I think I had some weights in there. The good thing about the G9 G9X were that the weights, they did not rattle at all, right? On some mice, when you put in weights, they rattle. They don't sit 100% in place, but on my G9X, they were perfect. So weight tuning, I wouldn't mind that, but I wouldn't mind if it didn't have any weight tuning. If it just, you know, around 100 grams or more. Not too heavy, not too light. So either way, I'm fine with that. Then it had some LEDs on top, which signaled the current DPI. You could change the DPI right with the buttons. So on this one, you can't do that. On my FK1, so obviously change the DPI on the bottom, which for gaming is fine, I guess, because right, you just set it one way you like it and then just leave it like that. Obviously, not a lot of, as far as I know, not a lot of gamers change their DPI mid-game, even though a lot of companies have the so-called, what do they have? I think the sniper buttons, right, as such, which you press a button, right, and then it switches obviously the DPI to a lower sensitivity, for example, and so you can get that more accurate shot. But yeah, so this has DPI switching on the bottom, and obviously you can just cycle through it, right? But what the G9X had it had two buttons perfectly placed. So most brands put the DPI switching over here, right? But the G9X had it just below, since the main buttons were detached from the main shell of the mouse, right? They were sitting just beneath the left mouse button, right? You had the plus, the minus and the plus. And beneath it was the LED strip, which had like a man running, a small miniature running guy, and some indicators for what DPI you had it on, right? So you just press minus or plus and boom. Very intuitive. It was very easy to press. You could never press it accidentally, which is amazing how they implemented that. The curves on it were just perfect. If you had a G9 and G9X, you know exactly what I'm talking about, obviously. But that was just a perfect implementation of how to switch DPI on the fly. So, for example, in some programs, when I did when I switched to a Photoshop or something, and I needed to like do some really precise movement, I just pressed minus a few times, and I was at like 400 DPI from 1600 or what I had at the time, and then I could just really precisely move the cursor where I wanted it to. So that was amazing. Yeah, so switching the DPI, very useful. I wouldn't like I said, most mice have it below the scroll wheel, which is not as easy to press. I mean, it depends how you get used to it, but over here it would be perfect. Exactly what G9X had. And the most important feature, in my opinion, was the fact that the mouse had the so-called micro gear precision scroll wheel, but I remember it being called the hyperscroll wheel at the time. So what that is basically on most mice, right? If you don't know what that is, you scroll down and scroll up, and it has these steps, right? Obviously. So most mice have like 16, 18, 24 steps. But on the G9X, you could press a button. It was actually at the bottom of the mouse, if I remember correctly. And you press the button, and then the scroll wheel would turn to this free scroll mode, where you just flick the mouse button and it would just continually spin, right? And obviously it would stop after a period of time, but it would just continually spin. So the amazing and cool thing about that is the fact that if you had, let's say you were working a lot with PDF documents, which I do a lot, and you needed to like scroll 30 pages down, so instead of clicking the scroll bar, pushing it down, or if you're working with the mouse, right, you can obviously press a page up, page down, but you can just flick it, right, and instead of going page by page when you press like page up, page down, it will just move continuously, right? And when you need to stop, you just tap the mouse button, and you would stop on the page where you wanted it to, right? So you could just visually, you get a visual feedback on, maybe you don't know exactly where the the picture is which you're looking at in the PDF document. You just flick it, you just watch the continuous scrolling of the page, and then you just tap the mouse button and it just stops, and you're exactly where you want it to be. So yeah, today it's called Micro Gear Precision Scroll Wheel. At least that's what Logitech calls it. And some of their models have that. I'm not sure which one actually has that. Let me check. I think it's the, what do they call it? It's the, I'm not sure actually. I don't know which mice exactly have that. I'm pretty sure the G series doesn't have that, or maybe some do, but I think it's one of their regular lines which has that. But anyway, yeah. So back in the day it was called the hyperscroll wheel. Amazing feature. So yeah, that's from some of the features that I would like to see if Logitech would make a revision of the G9X. That would be really cool. It was a laser mouse. Now I prefer optical, of course, just for the sake of optical working better on soft pads, but I wouldn't mind laser if they, you know, did a similar look and feel to the old one, especially if it had hyperscroll function. It had 1 millisecond response time, so obviously that was 1000 Hertz. I usually put my mouse on 500, as I don't game, so you know, I just don't mind. It's just a good medium value. That's 2 milliseconds, I believe, so not an issue. It had, I believe the G9X had, or the G9, I'm not sure, it had 3200 DPI, so that wasn't the problem. Yeah, it was a really nice mouse. But like I said, I'm using the G203 now, which is fine. Again, it is not really suitable for the claw grip, especially if you have like a really heavy claw grip like I do. You know, it's just not as ideal. But yeah. So hopefully for us, you know, old school G9 and G9X fans, maybe we'll get sooner or later an updated G9 and G9X, or something similar to that, or maybe another company makes a mouse which has a similar design but a lot of the same features, right? So yeah, that was just one thing that I wanted to share. Hopefully I can buy, you know, in the future a mouse which I won't have serious hand pain because I'm using it, right? So yeah, that will pretty much be it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.